Hi, Oshan. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Thanks. How are you doing,
Welcome.
Pablo?
Welcome. I'm doing well. Nairobi is a bit chilly, cold, but we are happy. I want to introduce you to the panel and, of course, to those who are watching us and those who are participating. Osahon Akpata, I hope I pronounced that right, Head of Consumer Payments at Ecobank Transnational Incorporated Nigeria. Thank you so much for making time. It's a very important conversation. We're looking at the future of payments, and many of us are still asking ourselves when we look at the structures that we have across Africa, before we even look at the future. We're always told, you don't know what tomorrow holds and you have to live for today. I would like to ask you this. What are the current trends, first of all, before we look at the future of payments? What would you be able to say you're seeing as far as payments are concerned today?
Thank you for the question and good morning, everyone. Let me just say that when I think about the current trends that are affecting payments right now, we've seen this sort of evolution, right, of payments from checks to, let's say, the use of cards, and then now moving more towards instant payments. We've also seen a lot more of the use of new technologies like blockchain in the payment space. And one thing that's happening a lot right now in the fintech space is that there's a lot of foreign direct investments by VC funding, and we can expect to see more innovation on the horizon as operators build products to solve payment problems for customers. That's what I would say is happening right now. Is on a very high level. That's what's going on.
Right. What about on the low level? Because in the end, we do not want to leave anyone behind. I've heard of situations where, those who have no literacy or high literacy levels to understand these new innovations that are taking place in terms of payments, they feel left out. They feel, this is not their space. I would love to read from you, from where you sit. How do you ensure that we leave no one behind and that it's not just a class situation that we're trying to create with this innovation?
Yeah, thanks. Look, I think it's a very important question you're asking because we see this innovation, and yes, you're right. A lot of these fintechs, um, a lot of activities around building of applications. If a person has a mobile app, then you can do so many different things with that, which requires internet access. So yes, you're very right. When it comes to the low level, I think the first thing to think about is financial inclusion, right? And what's happening with that. So one of the things that we've done at Ecobank is to say, okay, we want more people to be able to access financial services. So we went about getting regulatory approval in the countries where we are in 33 African countries. So we went about getting that kind of regulatory approval so that we can offer a light KYC bank account to consumers. And we call that the EcoBank Express account. Now, the thinking behind it was, okay, so we have this mobile application, which we launched in 2016. We get all these people to be able to access these financial services. You can use the mobile app to make payments, send money, pay merchants, all sorts of things like that. But what we found was that a lot of people don't have access to smart devices. I mean, I know, yes, the data says that more and more people are getting access to smart devices, but even when they have some of the basic devices, they can't afford internet, right? So speaking about what you say, the low level, one of the things that we did was to look at the USSD channel and ensure that everything that we offer on the mobile application, we also offer on the USSD channel, because that's one way you can make sure that people have access to financial services is with a feature phone. They can just dial *326# in our own case with EcoBank and access some of those services. So one aspect of it is the access to be able to do something like that. We can even do something like a QR payment, which is, we have EcoBank Pay QR, which is designed for a mobile application, and you're supposed to scan and pay. We even make that accessible on the USSD platform so that you just dial a string and you're able to make a QR payment. Now, the other side that you mentioned is the literacy, right? So we understand you need financial literacy. So even the understanding that you need to understand or know the importance of actually having a bank account. So we've had to invest in financial literacy and also product literacy. When you accept that, okay, I want to have a bank account and I want to access it through a digital channel or an agency banking channel, and I'll speak a little bit more about the agency banking later, then we needed to educate those customers about how to use the products as well. So we've invested in that education so that people everywhere, in different segments of our population, are able to access these financial services and payments. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to understand also, this is a multi-sectoral, you know, sector where you cannot do on your own as banks, and the fintechs cannot also do on their own. The governments or the regulators also have a role to play. Without being diplomatic, Osahon, who do you think is dropping the ball in this process of ensuring that the future of payments becomes very innovative and seamless and very easy for everyone to use? I mean, who do you think is dropping the ball so that we can be able to see how to make them pick the ball back up?
Okay, it's an interesting angle. I wouldn't say that anybody is dropping the ball. It is just not an easy thing to do when you want to expand financial inclusion across, markets where there are real challenges, right? So, for example, now one challenge is infrastructure. You mentioned that whole thing about, low-level data connectivity, people being able to access things. So you need infrastructure to be able to do so. Now, who's going to pay for that infrastructure? It has to be private sector led, right? So you have, telcos building this infrastructure, which we have now. And if you think back 20 years ago, access to a mobile device was really for the privileged, right? It wasn't something that was had mass acceptance or availability, and the people could not afford to have a mobile device. So yeah, we have to give credit to all the different governments and all the different private sector companies who have invested in building some of that telco infrastructure, which a lot of these payments now ride on, right? So there's that aspect, but it takes time and it takes money. And we're not talking about a very, very rich, or should I say, we're talking about economies where the average income or the average, GDP per capita is actually not very high. So it's a balance, right? When you think about what happens in some markets compared to the African markets, the ability to invest and know that you will get a return on that investment is a little bit challenging. So some things have been done in that regard. With regard to the banks or the fintechs, yes, I mean, banks, fintechs, telcos, there needs to be more collaboration, and there already is. I know that Ecobank collaborates with lots of fintech firms and telcos to create these solutions that make it possible for people to access these financial services. Thanks.
Right. I'm going to ask you this. Just last year alone, 1.1 billion fraud attacks were actually detected since the beginning of that specific year alone. And with more retail purchases shifting online and payment processes becoming digital, the threat is definitely becoming more and more. I would love to understand from where you sit, how much of a challenge is fraud a thorn in the flesh of your operations when it comes to unlocking new payment innovations?
Yeah, fraud is definitely a big challenge that a bank like Ecobank needs to contend with when it comes to innovation. First, we need to appreciate that fraudsters are also innovating. Just like we're having this conference today discussing the future of payments, they are also meeting somewhere to talk about the newest ways to break into bank systems. So banks and other payment providers need to stay a step ahead of these criminals. As a bank, we are constantly beefing up our security systems and investing in the latest technology while training our staff as well. Our information security team continue to arm themselves for the battle ahead because it's a real battle to keep ahead of criminals who are trying to compromise systems. We also inform our staff about ways to avoid compromise of our systems. And then one of the other things that we do a lot of is we frequently send out messages to our customers to sensitize them about fraud, to tell them, hey, listen, you know what? Don't give out your personal identification number. Don't give out, certain information to people. People are constantly socially engineering, trying to do all sorts of different things to get access to customers' data and money. So fraud attempts are a huge factor in innovation. They are also even a factor when it comes to the adoption of digital payments. You can imagine that customers have refused to onboard on digital channels for fear that they might lose their funds to fraudsters. And we keep reinforcing to them that, having cash is also dangerous because it's actually probably more dangerous because when cash is stolen, it's totally untraceable. So it's definitely a factor. When you're thinking about innovation, you have to think about how do you do something innovative and also protect customers from loss. Thanks.
Right. Now, in the beginning of my presentation or my introduction, I mentioned how COVID-19 has disrupted the way things are being done. Today, we would be seated somewhere in a conference, having a proper physical exchange of ideas and networking. But here we are today, virtually. I want to understand for you, has this pandemic been a blessing or a curse when it comes to your operations in the line of payment technology transformations, the new ideas, the new innovations? Has it, pulled you guys back, or do you feel like, what, COVID-19 is the best thing that ever happened to our business today?
I would say it's both. It's a double-edged sword, right? There's no doubt, and this is a very, I would say, common narrative. COVID-19 has accelerated the acceptance of digital payments, and we've seen it, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that. But it also came with some negative consequences, such as loss of life and livelihoods for lots of people. Consumers and businesses are facing uncertainty. At the early stages of this pandemic, you can imagine people would spend less or businesses would invest less. There was a lot of uncertainty. So it affected the business in many ways. That being said, the positive effects on payments have been heralded as the silver lining in the dark cloud that the pandemic has brought. We've seen growth in things like e-commerce. There was a McKinsey report that noted that we experienced 10 years of e-commerce penetration in 3 months at the start of the lockdown. So this means that we've experienced an increase in usage of our cards and our online payment channels. And customers were also looking for contactless payment solutions. And at Ecobank, we were the first to launch the Ecobank, the QR solution, which customers can just scan and pay in many of our markets. So they really did come to us and request that solution. We've also seen increased acceptance of digital payments. I mean, we did not have to push as hard to get customers to accept digital payments because it became a necessity for survival. Right? It was seen that okay, well, this virus might be transmitted by physical notes, so maybe people should use more digital payments. So people didn't struggle so much when they were told, okay, here's the way. This is an alternative that you can use instead of using cash. So definitely, I would say that it has had a positive effect, but at the same time, there were negative effects that it's had on the customers we serve. Thank you.
Right. I'll ask you a very final question with regards to, a conversation that we'll have in a very short while to come, and that is on the partnerships with fintech companies or those who are offering fintech solutions. In fact, there was even a question in the previous session on whether the banks will go ahead and innovate as the fintech companies still try to build capacity to offer the technological payment solutions for the banks. Where do you see the future when it comes to partnerships in coming up with these transformational payment technologies from where you sit?
Okay, I think that there's a lot of scope for partnerships when it comes to offering financial services. And it doesn't even only stop at fintechs, especially on this continent in which we are, right? The telcos are a major player. If we were talking about the US, yeah, okay, so in the Americas, telcos are not a major player in financial services, right? You don't see Verizon or T-Mobile in the US handling financial services. But on this continent, the telcos have built a large mobile money business. I think we can see that from even some of the recent investment activity over the last 3 to 6 months. We've seen Airtel and MTN announce valuations of their payment business along with investors like MasterCard and TPG Rise and the Qatar Investment Authority into Airtel, just saying, hey, this is big, right? So there's definitely a lot of work that has to go on. Now, incidentally, I will also mention the big tech players, right? Because as I was mentioning, the Western world, like the US, where telcos aren't a major player in financial services, the big tech players are getting into financial services in some of those markets. And it's just a matter of time before it comes to these markets, right? Where you see some of these big tech players offering financial services via their channels because they do have large followings. I mean, you do have some of these companies that have over 1 billion users on multiple products, right? Yeah. So what's going to happen, I see in the future, is there's going to be a collaboration between some of these different players to offer financial services. We've already started seeing it, as even at Ecobank, we collaborate with telcos and fintechs. I'll give you an example. So in Ghana, for example, we launched a product called the Express Loan, which is a digital financial, the digital loan that you offer. It's offered on your mobile device. And we decided to collaborate with MTN and offer that loan on their mobile money menu, right? And then we partnered with Jumo, who's a fintech player, for the credit scoring engine. And we launched that product about 2 years ago, like let's say middle of 2019 it was. And after 2 years, we had disbursed over 10 million loans through that particular partnership. And so you can see that you can achieve scale with a partner like a big telco like MTN, and have some expertise from a fintech to help with the scoring, and have the financial intermediation skills of a bank and the capital, right? So I think everybody brings different things to the table, right? Yes, fintechs are very innovative. They're actually quite nimble, and you would expect that they will continue to build and create different solutions that meet customer needs. Banks have large customer bases, but they also have very good understanding of regulation. And so they can understand how to handle something well with the regulators so that you actually get a good outcome, because regulators have to look out for the population and make sure that you avoid harm. And so banks are also good with risk management. And telcos have large customer bases as well and have good customer insights. So I think everybody can bring something to the table to have very good outcomes for the population. Thank you.
Right. So collaboration is possible, and it should not be seen as competition and the scramble to eat the bigger part of the pie. I think this is what you're trying to say.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Thank you so much for actually making time for this conversation. I want to say great efforts going on from where you sit, and I want to believe that you will also act as models for this collaboration that we just talked about right now. We want to wish you well, even in the midst of this pandemic. We know times are tough, but you are tougher. And I'm sure that you will continue succeeding in your endeavors. Thank you so much, Osahon, for being part of this conversation.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Before I leave this session to go to the next one, I want to acknowledge our sponsors and partners, those who have been able to make these sessions very successful. Currency Cloud, thank you very much. It's Credit, also, thank you very much for being part of this. The FinTech Association of Nigeria has also been very instrumental in putting this event together. The FinTech Times, the Bankers Journal in Uganda. Of course, we have RegTech Africa, Intelligentio, and iAfrica. We want to say thank you so much.